Welcome to a reading of Zensuon Crystal Age. Chapter 7 Not Getting a Break in Break City, where Halfling has no time to consider his new revelation, as before long a new one causes things to complicate further. The Halfling was sprinting back across the bridge. This is not happening, he concluded objectively within the confines of his reality. They're already one step ahead of me, Mika reconsidered as he got to the other side of the bridge while deep twilight fell across the warehouse before him, drawing long shadows. I need to change clothes, hide my face. No, that just look more suspicious. Ah! The thoughts were running through his head at the same quick pace as he was running through the alleyways. He knocked himself back to his senses just in time, noting the marks of cloth and dagger at the edges of the alleyway that were still fresh in his mind, although now having occupied the same place with a stream of what ifs as Mika tried to calculate how far he'd have to run. I see him! A voice erupted from an alleyway junction he just passed. This caused Mika to jolt, glance left, then right, then dive in an uncomfortably smelling heap of discarded metal that for a human child might count as a decent fort. For a halfling, it was just as good. A cross-eyed man, tall, lanky, and lacking in muscle, what he had in old green clothing appeared. Alongside him was a well-padded man in yellow clothing, wearing a black hat, which Mika, peeking from his hiding place, realized was in fact a torn shoe. What's it? Huh? Halfling! Halfling! The squat man called as if for a dog in his squeaky voice, looking around and causing Mika to dive further into what he hoped was rotten food. You sure you saw him? The squat man looked up to his cross-eyed friend, waving a broken glass bottle he was firmly holding in front of his friend's place. The taller man swatted his hand with an arm where it was holding a broken knife at the blade. Yeah, I did. The taller, green rag wearing ragged man pushed forward, looking around furiously to prove himself right. But the squat person behind him watched his friends flailing about. Yesterday you swore to some damn Grand Baetylus. Yellow-coated man shook in disbelief, and his torn shoe did with him. Yet somehow refused to fall, as if glued onto his head. Mika felt a bit bile coming up from his throat watching that, but held back. The thought that it was not exactly by glue came to his mind, as something greener was popping out of the side of his bald head. Shut up! The green man growled in the most mule of voices, and took his glare off the yellow man and into the alley, only to peer with his cross-eyed glance at Mika's pile of trash. At least Mika thought that was the case. To then be approved shortly after as he started tiptoeing towards him. What you doing? Shorter person, charitable word to describe him, shouted and made the lanky man of green flinch and pause. I'm a being quiet, you dope! Shrill voice of the green man shrieked back at the yellow man as he turned to face him. Mika suddenly felt something weigh down on him and heard a very distinct, somewhat soothing sound. A dirty white cat, smeared with a bit of whatever greenish thing kept the yellow man's boot on his hand, latched to his otherwise fluffy fur, was settled on top of the heap of trash Mika was within, claiming it as its own. The two men glanced in shock, awe, and likely confusion as they stared at the cat. Get out of here, get! The green man sniffed horribly, spat a patch of something much more solid than liquid from his mouth. So Mika had to once again stifle his stomach reflex and bite down on his lower lip. Ain't no messing with cats! Bad luck, boy, said! The yellow man used all of his weight to shove aside the green, luckily very unbalanced man, grunting in a way that made it obvious his throat needed to go through some strain to get air in and out of it. All right, Vicky mother. If you're gonna be shoving, I'm finding the halfling by my lonesome. The taller one shoved back with a large, almost skeletal-like palm and pushed himself off the alleyway, as if the yellow man was in a wrong now for daring to do such a thing. Unfortunately for him, the man with the shoe, or shoe with the man, followed soon after in a duel proclaiming such wisdoms of his mother, or summoned mother, and her insight on catching halflings. After way too long for comfort from Mika, the two were finally unseen and unheard. The cat scampered in with the halfling and mewed within the confines of the trash heap. Thanks, little girl, little guy or girl, Mika whispered, smiling, then remembering he might get trash in his mouth, and then so he cleared his throat and closed his mouth. The cat objected to the halfling being in its trash, and so Mika rolled out of the heap with his lower half covered in half liquids he'd rather not assume as to their origin, falling on all four onto the thankfully less filthy cobbles. Trying his best to prevent himself from gasping due to the fumes locked within his nose and chest, making his eyes water from scents he never smelled before. Smells so terrible they felt viscous in his mouth. It's almost like he tasted them. Never again. Mika tried to return to his senses. It's better this way. Best not to disturb cats. He didn't know much about Mana, but his own father did tell him about getting on the better side of cats for luck. And he could use all of the luck right now. Night covered the city. Starlight scarce in the alleyways. Everything was blackness ahead. I'll have to walk slowly by the walls, keep my eye out for a place to hide in case these two crazy humans come here. Were they humans? Probably. Doesn't matter. I can try to light up a fire? No. My pack was drenched with seawater. But maybe long enough has passed so I can try to light it up? But what if those crazies sees me? I'd rather they not see me, and I not them. I already know I can avoid their amazing detection skills. Darkness it is. Mika continued his journey across the alleyways. Thankfully, the signs he left remain. Likely no one sees the point in cleaning up the breeze here, not during the night, anyway. Though once he was somewhat assured he was getting closer, getting more confident, he started to rush, only to stumble upon a curious noise. The loud sound of wood breaking, metal clanging, and grunting. Mika started to run, but stopped in his tracks before entering the empty juncture where he left his orc, and peeked. Guards clashing with swords and shields crashed against the hooded construct in combat. There were a few guards. It was hard to tell with all the darkness, but they were outnumbered. It was narrowing that junction, and they would likely had a disadvantage against creatures that didn't really hold much space beneath the dark cloaks, and so kept the spears on their backs and had to go into face-first melee. The only thing that saved the guards was their skill in fighting on the streets, an armor that kept them safe from stabs in the dark they couldn't see coming, while defending their exposed areas as best they could. This also meant the fight was sort of a prolonged swingy stakes. The guards were defensive, but they could eventually tire. The constructs would not. Maybe? Probably. It was hard to tell what magic was driving them. It was no magic a halfling could use, nor is Gollum making public knowledge. But if the guards are barely touching these constructs, where is that loud crunching wooden sound coming from? Mika's eyes widened. They know Nuraka is in there. They are breaking down the door! Do I risk my life to get him? Sure, he has the Baetylus and axe, but are those really worth my life? If I escape now, I could probably make it out of the city, but what then? What if I encounter more guards? I wanted my orc to fend them away. What if I'm wanted outside of Break City? Do I just keep running until I stumble on a solution? Find a way to hide? No, I've gotten this chance, and by Stilly I'm going to take it. The Baetylus will be mine. Mika's hands throbbed in pain as they shone lightly in the purple light. What? He glanced down at the cuts he had at the back of his hands, glowing in that eerie and, more importantly, attention-grabbing light. He stuffed them in his shirt and huffed. What is going on?